Is he the one doing it?
Yes.
Can folks hear me? Or...
Yeah, we go.
Yes.
Okay, I'll take that as a thumbs up.
Yeah.
So DFM produced a memorandum and provided to the PUAB that explains this transaction. And as an overview, great opportunity for the Water Pollution Control Department to experience some debt service savings and to really enter into the market and conduct this transaction in about 2 weeks and save some dollars for your ratepayers. In terms of background,
Nope, we just lost him.
Lost you.
Any better now on this
Yes.
device?
That's better.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
Any better now on this device?
Yes.
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 Good.
Yeah, we got you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, I see some heads nodding. So I'll just kind of go through the memo that we have 2 series of bonds to refund here, the 2012 Bs and the 2013 Cs. And in total, it's about $65 million of refundable bonds. We're going to refund these. The 2012 Bs will be a tax-exempt transaction that's called a current refunding, and the 2013 Cs are going to be an advanced refunding with taxable bonds. In terms of the interest rate environment, really the interest rates are at historic lows, and as we can see in the graph on the bottom here, the blue line is where current rates are. The yellow line is our average rates over time. And if we had to put a probability on this, meaning what percentage of time have rates been lower than they are now, that would be about 2%. So quite a great opportunity with low rates. Our expected savings are going to be in the neighborhood of about $25 million for both of these series of bonds. So the aggregate savings in cash flow will be about $25 million. And the way it is structured is that you will have about $100,000 of savings over the first, call it 14 years. And then most of the savings is on what we call the back end, where you'll experience between $2 to $5 million in debt service savings. One thing that we did elect to do was to what we call shorten the transaction. So this is the equivalent of refinancing a 30-year home mortgage with a 15-year home mortgage while maintaining essentially the same mortgage payment or a slightly lower mortgage payment. So we're taking about 5 years off of the 2012 Bs and about 4 years off of the 2013 Cs. And what this really does is provide a lot of flexibility and optionality for the utility and the city here. So quite a good opportunity. In terms of schedule, things are, I don't want to say wrapped up, but we've been doing about 3 months of work, and it's going to culminate, starting today with the PUAB, next week with the city council, and then also we have to get approval of the MDFB, which is Missouri Development Fund, essentially. And we're going to post all our documents up on the internet on the 22nd, and we're going to price the bonds the last day of September. And closing will be about 2 weeks after that. So, given our interest rate environment, the call dates of these 2 series of bonds, the savings opportunity presented, we think this is going to be a very good transaction for the city and the utility. And a lot of the savings, it is quite a bit of savings, $25 million, and you're able to do quite a bit of shortening the transaction, which again provides some great future flexibility and optionality. So hopefully people can hear me. I lost a picture here, but just let me know if you can see me.
We see you.
So do you need a motion?
Does it? Can you hear me?
Let me check one thing, sorry.
I can take. Can I respond?
Yeah.
Yeah, we would appreciate a recommendation from the PUAB, and this will go to council on Monday.
I understand that. I was just gonna see if anybody had any questions first. Or any discussion. Do you want to have a motion and a second and then discussion? Can I have a motion, please?
So moved. To accept the recommendation for the refunding transaction for the water pollution control system.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. Now we'll have discussion. Anybody have any discussion or questions on it?
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
Who was the second? I'm sorry. Okay.
Dave.
Thank you.
Hearing none, please call the roll.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Les Boatright,
Yes.
Joe Zach,
Yes.
David McDowell,
Yes.
Bridget McCandless. Yes. Sherry Tyndall. Yes. Anthony
Yes.
Sorry. Jeremita.
Yes.
Thank you.
Motion passed. Thank you for your presentation. Motion
Thank you,
passed.
sorry about the technical difficulties.
No problem. We have them all the time here. That's why he gets so
Thank
much money. Next thing is reports. Finance and administration, please. Questions on utility finance for July 2021.
Hi, I'm Cindy Gray, and I'm the CFO.
Put a mic over to her.
Hi, I'm Cindy Gray, CFO, and I'm going to provide some information on the July 2021 financials for the PUAB meeting. First off, just some general notes. We are in the second month of this year, new year, which started July 1st. So this July is the first month. We are finishing up the August financials, which will be presented at the next meeting. So we're going over the July, which is our first month. So in the first month, not a lot happened, except for there's a few little notes that you should be aware of in the first month. July 1st, union contract rates went into effect. So you'll see increases, usually in the personnel, because of the contract increases. And then also, you'll also see a lot of times in other services and supplies, you'll see some increases there. A lot of those yearly contracts come due in July. And so we create purchase orders for bulk purchases, usually for the entire year. So those expenses are usually increased during that first and second months of the year. So those were the main items that of difference that I thought I should at least point out to you, but everything else is looking really good and right on track with the normal budget, what we expected for the budget to be. Anybody have any questions?
Have any questions from the board? Thank you, report, fine. Next we have municipal services.
Aside from the bond refunding discussion and any questions you may have on the financials, I don't really have anything else for today. Unless you have questions for me.
Could you speak? Well, first let me say thank you for our fantastic tour. It was wonderful. This is the second time I've been and I learned a lot. I know that there's consideration in Sugar Creek of a new, excavation. And I know that we talked about that with water, but I wanted to ask, do you see any issues that would be coming from that for your work?
We don't have the same issues as waters, we're above ground with all of our processes and everything, and we're not protecting an aquifer. So we don't see anything major from our perspective, that nothing like they're gonna see, potentially.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I would also like to thank Ms. Phelps and her entire group of people. You guys, thumbs up from me. I mean, your entire crew was so helpful and happy, and everybody here, if you haven't been down to the treatment plant, I strongly recommend you go check it out.
They'll both probably also strongly recommend you bring nose plugs.
But I commend you and your people. Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Any other comments or attaboy awards for water pollution? Next on the agenda is water. Mr. Montgomery.
Thank you for the praise on the tours, because I think that was meant towards us too. But it was an opportunity for us to get out and see the plant. It reminds me of what I've done for a few years, and it's just a nice feeling for me to get out and go through that myself. So I appreciate the opportunity. I'm looking forward to the next one. I guess next Tuesday. So the other item, Mr. McDowell, you had a follow-up question about whether we had, see what was the question, is have an emerging disaster plan for the water. Do we have an emerging disaster plan? So I pulled the plan just so that you would see that we actually do have one. The Department of Natural Resources requires us to have a plan, and just so happens that we had to update that with the EPA risk assessment and resiliency requirements that we had just last winter. So we went through and redid the whole thing. As far as giving out a copy to everybody, that's not something we normally would do. It's not, there's stuff in there and that they put in there that we had to address cybersecurity issues and that type of thing. And if we have any vulnerabilities, we just assume people not know where those are.
Right.
So the people that get the copy of that are the staff members that need it. Say the city of Sugar Creek Fire Department, anybody that we have chemicals, we're in Sugar Creek, as you well know, that anybody went on a tour. So I just want to make sure that we have one, we're good to go, we follow that, and we're also tied in with the cities. I guess we have, what do we call that? But anyway, we have the cities, it's warped in with theirs too, so we're good on that.
Sort of like mutual aid.
Yeah, there is.
So-
But the fact that it is in Sugar Creek, so the fire department, they do need to know what we have, where we have it. So on a need-to-know basis, we're willing to share that. But on otherwise, it's just our staff. And of course, the Department of Natural Resources, who requires us to do it, has a copy. So,
Mr. Montgomery, I want to thank you for the tour as well. This was very enlightening to understand what we're supposed to be doing and how you're doing it. I guess my concern was with things that we don't control. I know that we're pumping water, 150 feet under the surface, and less than a mile from us is an active landfill and several closed landfills. And I know that you're doing constant testing on the water to make sure we have no contaminations. But I guess my concern was if you found a contamination and you said, oh my God, and you had to shut things down, are we allowed to then pull water from another source? I mean, like from Kansas City, Missouri, could they handle the 250,000 people that we give water to?
right. So we do have emergency interconnects with Kansas City, but those are only for like if there a power failure or something happened that would destroy some certain spot. But as far as the aquifer is concerned, you're probably not aware of it, and I kind of mentioned it on the tour. We have 64 monitoring wells, so we're going to know 10 years, at least 10 years in advance of a drop of contaminant heading our way. It's not like it's going to happen overnight if something happens. So we monitor those monitoring wells. And so we have a time of travel, they would call it. So the worst case scenario, we would know 10 years in advance that something was heading our way. Yes, we're aware of the landfill. We understand there's demolition debris landfills north of us. There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, just stuff that's going up and down the river on a daily basis, that could, but the beauty of that aquifer is that the location, it's below, and it's really not, the water's not like what you think, that it just jumps in and it goes right into our wells. The water only is moving just, inches a day, if that, so it's such a pool of water that it's like taking a straw and drinking out of a bathtub and just drinking a small portion of it. And there's all this water around us. So we have a lot of backup towards that, but I wouldn't be concerned about the scenario where we would just have to jump off and go to Kansas City. To answer your question, we're set up to take water from Kansas City and Kansas City take water from us, but it wouldn't be enough. We couldn't meet all Kansas City's needs, and I don't know whether they on a given day could meet all of our needs, because we have a lot of common wholesale customers also, like Blue Springs, Lee Summit. So a lot of our wholesale, we wholesale half of our water. We could drop off probably 90% of our water immediately by just saying go to Kansas City, if you follow me. So we have a lot of backups, so I'm not too concerned about that. I don't lose any sleep over it at night.
I will sleep better now after listening to what you just said.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Dan. Dave, anybody else have a question?
May I follow on and ask a question, sir?
Yes.
So I know that there's a lot of discussion of the Sugar Creek excavation. Has there been discussion about what happens to that land when they're done quarrying?
I mean, no. I mean, first off, they'd have to change the zoning to get it. So then once the zoning is changed, then it would go to special use permit, and we'd have an opportunity to speak at that. But as far as down the road, whether that would you're leading to, or most people would say, you dig a hole out, you're probably going to put a landfill back in it. That's all pure speculation, and so I don't know. That would be total speculation on my part what their intentions are. They've never said that, to my knowledge, and we have the production manager and the deputy Matt McLaughlin, Karen Kelly. You probably met both of them before, but they'll be at the meeting tonight and all future meetings in Sugar Creek as far as that goes. But it would be speculation, so I just don't want to go there.
Okay. I just want to be sure that the PUAB has the opportunity to raise the concern that putting more trash next to a river when everyone is going to rely on that water eventually. I'm not just thinking 20 years from now, I'm thinking in 100 years from now, with whatever liner they put in there decays and whatever goop they pour in it then leaches into the water. I just think that we owe future generations a lot of consideration before we put landfills next to major waterways. So I just hope that important concern is expressed.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
I would agree with everything that Bridget said. For you that don't know, I was in that industry for half of my life.
I found that out
I
on
can
tour.
tell you that I tell people that whatever you put in the ground, you'll eventually end up drinking.
Well, Dan, just to follow up on Bridget's question, when they come up with a plan that they want to build this rock quarry there, don't they have to have some kind of a reclamation plan as part of their application as to what they intend to do once they're done with the quarry? Or is that not part of it?
I have no knowledge of that, if that's the case. So
I know in other industries and things, they always have a reclamation plan of what to do when they're through, but
I think David McDowell could probably tell you what they probably plan to do, because that's the business he was in more so than me.
I would bet you that's going to be a landfill. And they're going to, if they get by one hurdle, the second hurdle is not that bad. If you really want to stop this, you need to probably stop it now before it gets started.
Any other comments, questions? My only comment, when I first went to work at the water department, they showed me a map of the aquifer going under the Missouri River and where we get our water. And I looked at where they're putting Sugar Creek, putting theirs, and it's not even close to the aquifer in any way that I recall. Now, that's just my judgment. I'm not too concerned about it. But as Richard said, we need to look down the line for the next 100 years. My grandchildren, great-grandchildren will be worrying about it. But that's just my comment on it. I don't think it'll need to be addressed at some time if it gets close to the aquifer. But I don't see how it's going to at this time. I think it's going to be all in top water in the Missouri River is where I think it's going to be.
And it goes back
So
to
don't eat any catfish out of the Missouri River.
It's the same thing that I mentioned earlier, is that we have those monitoring wells. So
Yeah.
those will even monitor. Those were put in place because of the landfill.
Right.
So those strategically located to where we pick up anything headed our direction prior to it getting to the plant. So at a minimum, it'll be 10 years. Some of those, according to that report, go out as far as 200 years away. We would know that 200 years from now, based on where that monitor was placed, that we would, but I'm just saying the worst case scenario is we would know at least 10 years in advance. But there's a possibility we might know 15, 20, 50, 200 years. It would take a while for that water to get to our location.
What they correlate with is they see the Missouri River rushing down. That aquifer is not moving like that. You can't hardly see it moving, probably. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, we're in an unenviable situation because
Yes.
we have so much water that, I mean, I'm talking it's moving inches. It's
Yeah.
not moving like the Missouri River.
Right.
And we're not even drinking water out of the Missouri River. It might recharge the aquifer, but that's not what is where we're getting our water. So
Okay.
we're very fortunate.
Yes, we are. Okay. Any other questions, comments? IPL update on Dogwood and repair of H5 and H6.
Real quick, I also wanted to update you. Last meeting, I informed you about the manpower issue we were having. We've now had a total of 9 of our linemen who have left for one reason or the other. On top of that, we've had across the department, we've had just in the last month, I think 5 retirements announced, and that's caused some other shifts by people deciding to move to a different position than they currently have. So as those dominoes keep falling, we'll keep adjusting. But we've hired 3 new linemen, and we have a couple more prospects, but we're also looking at bringing on 3 apprentices, which would help us to refurbish our own ranks within a couple of years ahead, depending on where they place within the apprentice program. So the manpower issue is real, but we're working through it.
All the salaries gone. We can have a rate decrease. Yeah?
What's that?
We can cut the rates. No, I'm joking. Okay.
Well, the problem we run into, as I'm sure you're aware, the problem we run into is jobs that we can no longer do. We have to go out and try to find contractors, and it's the high contractor rates that are causing our people to leave in the first place. So we're trying to do everything in-house that we possibly can, things that we normally would have contracted out. We're trying to tackle some of those on our own. One of the possibilities is that if a crew is out working on a construction job, it may take them 30 minutes longer to get to where somebody's tree knocked down the connection to their house. So it may take a little longer for those type of outages, but we're working through those situations. So the crews are out there.
Do we still have a crew in Louisiana?
No, they were gone for just a little over a week, and the MPUA recalled them. They had enough support that they released our guys, and they're already back home.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jim. Go ahead with the other.
On the Dogwood update, the PUAB had requested an update on our operating statistics, the numbers for Dogwood. In your packet is a summary of the information that was presented at the owners group meeting. I've highlighted a few key things on there. Through some recent upgrades, Dogwood was able to achieve some good improvements in their capacity. Our 12.3% share, that translates into an additional 4 to 5 megawatts of summer capacity, which helps us definitely. On the downside, their capacity factor, that capacity factor is how much of their, if they were able to operate 100% of the time, compare that to what they actually operate, and they're only at 28.3%. Now, that doesn't mean they were out of commission 72% of the time. It means that for whatever reasons, due to the economic conditions, load conditions, Southwest Power Pool didn't call on them to operate. You don't get credit for being available but not running. So we only run when SPP schedules us, and so that for the past year that is at 28.3, which you can see that's significantly down from some of the previous years. In spite of that, they were forecasting a positive $9.3 million cash flow, and in their budget, they're operating less, so that you can see the impacts there. They're still projecting a positive yearly net cash flow of anywhere from $4.5 to $9.5 million per year. So those, not sure exactly how they do that forecasting, but these are the numbers they provided to our owners group. If you do have specific questions about how Dogwood's operating, Paul Lampy, our system operations manager, is also our representative on the owners group, and so he's attended these meetings. And if you have any questions, I'm gonna pass you to him.
Mr. Porter.
Yes, Bridget.
So just so that I understand, if they have a $5 million net positive, we would receive, I guess, 12% of that, because we're 12% ownership. Is that?
That's correct.
Correctly? Okay, and then converse is true. If they have a net operating loss, we're on the hook for 12% of the operating loss.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Actually, let me ask one more question while I'm bothering you. I know that when we had our overall energy last year was less than the year before, probably some of that due to coronavirus, people working at different places. But if we see that in a couple of year trend, when are we able to go back to Southwest Power Pool and say, we think that our maximum contribution to the grid should only be X amount? And because as we think about what we need for replacement generation, I want to be sure we're only generating what we think we are responsible for. And then it comes to the question of, if you have all of this infrastructure and it's only working 28% of the time, you build an awful big system for a small amount of capacity. And so I just think people need to hear the why behind that.
So the 28%, it really is, so if Dogwood, say it's a 600 megawatt unit, that would be 600 megawatts to, 365, 24/7, how many megawatts they generate. So if SPP says, well, we only need 300 megawatts, that goes against that capacity factor. They're not that's only, say it was half loaded, that would be a 50% capacity margin. So there's more that goes into that. So during peak conditions, they need to be able to get that 600 megawatts. But, a day like today, they wouldn't need to be there. So the system has to be built, to meet that peak condition. And then there's that 12% capacity margin that they build into the system for outages, severe, sometimes there's transmission outages, sometimes there's generation outages, so they have to cover those with, so there has to be extra above what the peak is.
But to address your question, we update that report to SPP annually. In fact, I think it's February. February is when the report is due, the commitment that says, okay, we've got, this is our maximum load. This is the maximum load that we are covering, and here's how we're doing it. So not only do we have to report to SPP what our maximum load is, we also have to tell them how we are meeting that commitment with capacity. And again, some of you may have heard in the news about the clean energy payment plan that's been proposed. That's one of the questions we have back to them is how would you measure that? Because we don't schedule our own generation. We may have 20% that would qualify as clean energy, but we don't control day to day what we run. If SPP is able to get better economics, better resources elsewhere, they just don't schedule us any of our assets to run. However, last week we ran all 5 of our available combustion turbines 4 or 5 days in a row, and in fact, in one about a 32-hour period, we ran all but 3 hours, and it wasn't because of load; it was because of congestion. Due to some other outages in the system, the ability to get energy from the west over into this part of the network was severely restricted. So SPP, in order to provide that energy, they called on Independence, and we ran all of our units for that 4 or 5 days. Not something we would have normally expected this time of year. Certainly not on a load basis, but it was the congestion factor that all of those resources working together to cover that demand.
Wasn't that part of the outages in Kansas City and elsewhere? That
Yeah,
they
so
had all that. They probably
yeah, we actually have a 161
was all
line.
around us, but we didn't have any.
No, we didn't have the outages. It was
Yeah.
on other people's on Evergy's system.
Okay.
So
We did have one 161 line out that was out between us and Evergy.
Yeah.
And Evergy requested that outage. But then there's other contributing outages that cause this problem that are outside our system.
Okay.
I have a question for Mr. Knoll.
Bridget, do you have any more?
I let David go, and then I have one more question.
Dave, go ahead.
Jim, we had another unit break. We were talking about it prior to the meeting. You know, it's kind of like an old car. If you leave it in the garage and you never start it up, by the time you're ready to start it up and use it, the darn thing won't work. Do we have the ability to ask, can we run some electricity to make sure our units are working?
You do have the option to what they call self-schedule. If you need to do some testing, some maintenance, and you need to run your units, you can schedule them to run. However, if your operating cost is above the market cost for that period, you eat the difference.
Okay, but do you think it would probably be advantageous to us to do just that? Schedule, maybe, I don't know what you think is a good number, maybe every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, every 4 weeks, running for 2 or 3 hours to make sure every unit is available to go?
Well, you have to balance that with the wear and tear, and the units, a lot of our maintenance targets are based on the number of times you start it. So if you only start it to run for a couple of hours, that's counting against you on that regard. So I believe that we do quarterly testing.
Yeah.
We start them up and test them quarterly right now.
So we are doing testing
Yes.
every 90 days. Is that adequate?
Based on input from GE, yes.
Yeah. So,
They
and
want them to break though, right?
Oh, no. They got a reputation to take care of.
I mean, lately we haven't been able to haven't had to do the quarterly test because they've been called on at least once in a quarter, every unit.
Okay.
So it may only be for like a couple hour period, but.
Okay, that answers a lot of my questions. Go ahead, Bridget.
Bridget.
My last question is just about the age of Dogwood as a facility. Because if we're partial owners, we own 12% of its senescence as well as 12% of its generation and operating. So what do you anticipate those long-term retirement or repair costs would be, just so that we have a full understanding of our responsibilities?
So I don't know if I can answer the question of, when it's going to be retired and what the costs are going to be there. they just did a major upgrade. So, and they do a really good job of maintaining that plant. So it is a very good unit. It's a really efficient unit. And based upon what they just did, they're figuring at least 20 more years. But, there's ongoing maintenance. They budget around $5 million a year for just ongoing CapEx projects. And every year they're putting money back into it to keep it in good operating. And Kelson Energy is the one that, manages that on a day-to-day basis. And they really have done a really good job keeping that facility in good operating condition. So,
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anything else from staff?
Well, but that was the first item. We still have the second item. That
go
was
ahead.
After the last meeting and then after the last couple of council meetings, a couple of the PUAB members reached out and asked me about our repairs that were on hold for our units at H5 or at substation H. H5, that turbine is the one that was reported several months ago had a fault on the generator. So it can't run, it cannot produce electricity. It spins just fine, but it doesn't produce any energy until that generator can be taken back to GE shop, examined, the fault detected and repaired. H6 is the one that has damage on the turbine blades, probably from ingesting some ice during the winter, deforming the first row of blades a little bit. Both of those we had purchase orders submitted to get those repairs done. Council chose to postpone the decision. They didn't say no, they just postponed the decision until December. And the reason for that is linking it with our current project for developing a request for proposals for new generation, and then seeing how that's going to impact the decision for what to do with the combustion turbines. And the decision, the H5 repair was presented as 1.9 up to 1.9 million. Looking at that proposal, it also included over $300,000 for moving some units between substation I and H. If we take that piece out and just look at the substation, it would be a maximum estimate of 1.6 million for H5. The H6 turbine, the blade repair, that was estimated at $317,500. And there is concern about spending additional money on what's perceived to be old units that if we're going to get rid of them anyway, careful how much money we spend. So those are both on hold until December from the council. But again, I was asked by a couple of members to present that to you all for your discussion to look at what you think we need to do there.
Thank you, Jim. I have a question on the H5. The 1.9 million would that be when we put it in a different location or a location?
No, the 1.9, if they take the unit, if they take the generator and take it back to GE shop, they quickly find a simple fix and return it to us. That was estimated to be about $500,000. So that's a minimum cost of about $500,000. Then if they have to strip it down to the core, rewind it with all new copper, all new end rings, basically give you back a new generator, that would be about 1.6 million. The additional 300,000 was we have some units that have the same footprint. You could, if you needed to, you could take a rotor from one of the sub-I units and move it up to H. The reason you would even think about that is because they run on gas and I runs on diesel fuel. So it would give you the ability to keep a unit running on a lower cost fuel. But that's at a cost of $300,000 to make that shift. So if you throw that out, then 1.6 is the hopefully worst case.
I was wondering where the 300,000 was going. Okay, also, that, is there a warranty on any of this that repairs?
They do have warranty on their work. I'd have to get into.
Does it cost, it probably costs us, right?
Well, the more warranty you want, the more it's going to cost you.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, okay. Any other questions from the board?
Mr. Porter?
Go ahead. I can't hardly hear you.
Okay. So when you get these repaired, what would be a reasonable estimate of the amount of life that they would have left? 6 months, 10 years?
Well, the estimate from when the GE engineers were here and they examined the units, one of the things that they pointed out is they have a very robust life extension program. And when they're looking at what they consider a life extension program for this model, they're talking about 50,000 starts, or 5,000 starts and 200,000 operating hours. Our units are both at less than 30,000 operating hours and about 2,500 starts, give or take. So we've used about half of the starts, and we've only used less than 20% of the operating hours. So by GE's estimates, again, there's going to be wear and tear. There's going to be ongoing inspections and maintenance that have to be done. But these units have a significant amount of life left in them, both from the start perspective and from the operating hours.
Did I answer the question?
Yes, sir.
All right, anything else?
I think Mr. McDowell was waiting to ask something.
Matt?
No, I'm waiting for Bridget to make the motion.
Are you ready for that?
If I may, you did ask, you sent us a question via email about what is our obligation and how that fits into this discussion.
That'll be the next
question? Okay.
That'll be the next one.
Are you ready for a motion, Mr.
Yes.
Porter?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I wrote this out just so that it would be succinct. Whereas the H5 and H6 electrical generators have the capacity to produce 38 megawatts of power, and these two units have considerable life remaining based on their operating hours to date and the number of electrical starts. And whereas these generators have a high likelihood of repair by their manufacturer for an estimated cost of roughly $800,000 for both of them, up to $1.9 million combined. Am I correct on that? Okay. With a 2-month removal, repair, and reinstallation process. And whereas purchase of a new unit with capacity to generate 50 megawatts is in the range of $40 to $50 million, therefore is a prudent and cost-effective measure to maintain the generating capacity of Independence Power and Light in accordance with our agreement with the Southwest Power Pool. The PUAB recommends that the IPL staff move forward with the assessment for repair of the H5 and H6 generators.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. You get them, Christine? Any discussion on the motion? Call for vote.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Les Boatright,
Yes.
Joe Zack,
Yes.
David McDowell,
Yes.
Bridget McCandless,
Yes.
Sherry Tyndall,
Yes.
Anthony Jeremita,
Yes.
Motion passed.
Now,
Now you got a question.
now, let me,
What's your question?
All right. What is our obligation to the Southwest Power Pool? I mean,
Capacity?
that's what I'm asking him.
All right. The Southwest Power Pool, as a member of the integrated market, we have an obligation to provide 112% of our maximum load. Right now, that has been, was it 290? Was the last assessment was 291, and it looks like things have over. And again, we report this every year. We could possibly lower that somewhat, maybe into the 280s. We'll do that assessment all through the rest of this year, getting ready for that February report. We meet that obligation by a combination of our own internal assets, purchase power agreements, and the capacity contract with Oneta. From a capacity standpoint, Southwest Power Pool doesn't care. They just want a commitment that capacity is out there on the system, available for them to schedule and use. So our mix of generation helps us to meet that obligation. We currently have the way we cover that, and again, it's a combination of all of those factors. So as we annually test our units, we have to do what we call a full load test. We can't just say that it's capable of producing 15 megawatts. We have to prove it. So every year we do a full load test on our units, and that goes into the basis. The solar farm, anything generated on the solar farm, it subtracts from the load that we get from Southwest Power Pool. So that helps to lower that number a little bit. As Dogwood is able to get a little more, if any of the other units are able to get a little more, Southwest Power Pool is constantly updating their process for how they accredit the wind farms, because we all know wind doesn't blow all the time. So they have to come up with some kind of formula that will, across a year in general, what can you count on? And so that's the capacity they accredit there. We've gotten a little bit gain from our wind farms, a little bit of gain. So right now we have probably just a little bit of excess on our system. So when we go to in February, when we go to claim what our load is and how we're meeting it, we'll have some room to maneuver there. However, if a unit is out of service, SPP, in order for them to count that unit, they want to know that there is an actual plan in place to return it to service. You can't put a unit in mothballs and with no intention of ever running it and claim that it's meeting capacity. So you have to have some kind of a plan on how it's going to get back into service. With these purchase orders, when we get a purchase order, we can sit down with GE and schedule an actual visit to their repair shop. If we don't have a schedule, if we don't have a plan for a repair, we won't be able to count those megawatts. So that's how that all works together.
That answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Jim, any other questions? On the upcoming items, item A, I really would like to get taken care of in October. The inter-fund charges. It's on the schedule for October, and I would like a strict effort on that.
That'll be ready.
Okay, and the annual audit on the pilot also, so we can get them off of our upcoming items and get going down the road on the presentations and possibly having a open meeting sometime with the public. Okay? Anybody else got comments from the board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
with what we've heard today, the city council is planning on not doing anything until December on those 2 units. Is there any way that we can ask them to go ahead and move on it now? Is that in our power to make that recommendation that they go ahead and why
We
wait
can
90
make
days?
a recommendation to that effect, but we don't have any power. They told me that when I took over.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Yeah, what I understand your recommendation to move forward to the council is just that. So our next council meeting is Monday. The agenda just got posted, so this will be the next city council meeting. We'll place this on the agenda as a recommendation from this board.
Thank you, Adam. Does that cover you, Dave?
Does that require us to make a motion to ask them to expedite this request?
I think our first motion would cover it. Is that not right?
That's what I understand, yes. So it won't be Monday, but 2 weeks from Monday is when it'll be on the agenda.
Do we need a second motion to ask them to expedite this past? I mean, why wait till December? I think we should move as quickly as possible on this.
I can think you can just put an amendment on that motion. And if you want to add an amendment to that motion, Dave, we'll do that.
Bridget, would you like to put the amendment to your motion?
I accept the friendly amendment that it should be considered at the next opportunity by the city council.
And second,
Second.
motion on the amendment. Christine, call roll.
Larry Porter,
Yes.
Les Boatright,
Yes.
Joe Zach,
Yes.
David McDowell,
Yes.
Bridget McCandless,
Yes.
Jerry Tyndall,
Yes.
Anthony Giramita,
Yes.
Motion passed. Thank you, Adam. Any other comments from the board? Any comments from the staff? This meeting's adjourned.
Larry, you can't be done yet. We're not even at an hour.